There's something undeniably strange about the silence of the universe. In the cold black void, scattered with trillions of stars, it's almost impossible not to ask, are we really alone? The question has haunted philosophers, scientists, soldiers, and school children alike for centuries. And yet, the deeper our technologies reach into space, the louder the silence becomes. But what if it isn't silent at all? What if someone or something has been trying to speak, and the people we trust to listen, the ones with billion-dollar telescopes, deep space antennas, and interplanetary robots, aren't telling us the whole story? This story begins not with aliens, but with a dream. In 1958, America was not merely racing against the Soviet Union for space superiority. It was racing against uncertainty. The launch of Sputnik by the USSR sent a jolt of fear through the American consciousness. The space age had arrived, not in triumph, but in panic. The US government swiftly created NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, not only to catch up, but to surpass, to dominate, and to explore. But from the beginning, NASA wasn't just about space exploration, it was about perception. NASA was positioned as the clean, white lab coat face of American progress. Yet behind that face lay connections to the military, to classified programs, and to Cold War secrecy. The space program was born in an era where information was power, and power was not freely shared. Even the men behind the curtain had curious backgrounds. Wernher von Braun, the father of American rocketry, had once been a member of the Nazi Party and an SS officer. Brought to the US through Operation Paperclip, von Braun and his team helped develop the rockets that would one day carry astronauts to the moon. But what else did they bring with them? And what exactly did they see once they got us to space? By the mid-20th century, a growing number of scientists were running into a troubling question. Given the age and size of the universe, there should be countless advanced civilizations out there. Mathematically, alien life isn't just likely, it's almost a certainty. This contradiction was famously dubbed the Fermi paradox, named after physicist Enrico Fermi, who asked, "Where is everybody?" It's a question that cuts deep. Our galaxy alone holds over 100 billion stars. Many of them have planets. Many of those planets lie in the habitable zone. Not too hot, not too cold. Given enough time, and the universe has had billions of years, life should arise. Civilizations should bloom, some should advance, and some should be visible. But we see nothing, or so we're told. NASA, with its budget of over $25 billion a year, operates some of the most advanced telescopes, sensors, satellites, and deep space missions ever devised. Its stated mission is to reach for new heights and reveal the unknown for the benefit of humankind. But despite decades of exploration, countless missions, and thousands of hours of data collection, not a single confirmed whisper from an alien world? Not one? To many, that's beginning to sound less like cosmic silence and more like human silence. Let's rewind to 1977. That year, a powerful radio telescope in Ohio, operated by a project called SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, detected a signal. It lasted for 72 seconds. It was never repeated. But it stood out so clearly from the cosmic background noise that the astronomer monitoring the printout circled it and wrote a single word in the margin. Wow! The WOW signal remains one of the most compelling pieces of potential evidence of alien communication ever recorded. It came from the direction of the Sagittarius constellation, from deep space. Its frequency, intensity, and sudden clarity remain unexplained. And yet, NASA remained quiet. In fact, NASA has often distanced itself from SETI-related work, defunding and de-emphasizing it despite enormous public interest. For an agency tasked with revealing the unknown, this reluctance raises questions. Was the WOW signal a fluke, or did it hit too close to something NASA didn't want to acknowledge? For decades, the term UFO was taboo in serious scientific circles. It belonged to tabloids, not textbooks. But behind closed doors, the US government was taking the phenomenon seriously. In the 1950s and 60s, as UFO sightings exploded across America and the world, the US Air Force launched Project Blue Book, a program designed to catalog and analyze these encounters. The public face of Blue Book was skeptical. The private files, later declassified, painted a more complex picture. Some cases, they admitted, defied explanation. And where was NASA in all this? Officially, NASA had nothing to do with UFOs, it didn't study them. It wasn't concerned with them. But internally, astronauts were reporting strange phenomena. Missions captured odd lights. Transmissions were cut, edited, and in some cases disappeared altogether. In 1969, Buzz Aldrin allegedly saw a UFO while en route to the moon on Apollo 11. In a later interview, he confirmed seeing a light out the window that appeared to be moving with the spacecraft. NASA said it was a panel that had detached. Aldrin didn't sound so sure. NASA, it seemed, was committed to a single narrative. Space was empty, orderly, and safe. Any hint to the contrary, especially one that suggested intelligence, was brushed aside. As the decades passed, NASA's pristine image began to crack. Whistleblowers emerged. Engineers, contractors, astronauts. They spoke of altered footage, of scrubbed transmissions, of unexplained orders from above. One NASA insider claimed that photographs taken on the moon showing unusual structures were deliberately airbrushed before being released. Another alleged that there were entire buildings on the far side of the moon, structures not made by nature and certainly not by man. NASA, of course, denied all of it. But denials weren't enough. Not anymore. A growing segment of the public, fueled by the rise of the internet and access to declassified files, began to question everything. They dissected images from Mars. They pored over moon mission logs. They listened to garbled astronaut audio, trying to find meaning between the static. The question was no longer, are we alone? The question had become, why haven't they told us? NASA's relationship with the public has always been carefully managed. The agency is a master of narrative. From the triumph of the moon landing to the heartbreak of Challenger, it tells stories that inspire. But what about the stories it doesn't tell? In 2007, a NASA warehouse employee discovered boxes of old magnetic tapes, hundreds of them. They were labeled Apollo 11 EVA, extravehicular activity. The tapes were supposed to contain original moon landing footage, high-resolution recordings that had never been seen by the public. But the tapes were blank, overwritten, lost. NASA eventually admitted that it had accidentally erased the original footage of the moon landing. Accidentally. To skeptics, this was not an accident but an erasure. A removal of something that was never meant to be seen. And if NASA could lose the most important video in human history, what else might it have lost? And so, the silence of the universe continues. But maybe it's not the universe that's silent. Maybe it's us. Maybe somewhere, deep in the black archives of a sprawling agency, inside secure rooms and classified files, behind doors that only a handful of people can open, there are answers. Photographs, transmissions, warnings. Maybe the silence is by design. But the story isn't over. In fact, it's only just beginning. Because the deeper we look into the history of NASA, the missions, the photos, the rumors, the voices lost in static, the more the question begins to shift. Not if NASA is hiding something, but how much. The moon is a silent witness. It hangs in the sky like an ancient sentinel, always watching, always present. It has inspired myths, legends, lullabies, and missions. Humanity's first steps beyond Earth were not random. We reached for the moon because it was there, and because perhaps something else was too. NASA called it exploration. But what if it was reconnaissance? It was July 16, 1969. The Saturn V rocket roared to life, carrying Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins on a journey that would change history. The world watched in awe as Apollo 11 lifted off from Cape Canaveral, the hopes of an entire planet trailing behind it like a vapor plume. 4 days later, the Eagle landed. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Those words became immortal. But they were not the only words spoken that day. Much of the radio chatter between astronauts and mission control was public. Some of it wasn't. In the early days of the internet, forums and bulletin boards buzzed with claims from amateur radio operators who had allegedly picked up uncensored transmissions from the moon. According to them, Armstrong and Aldrin described watchers, strange structures, lighted craft on the rim of a crater, silently observing their every move. NASA dismissed it all. Static, misinterpretation, imagination. But the whispers persisted. The moon is riddled with craters, deep shadowed scars from billions of years of impacts. Most are ordinary, but some aren't. Take crater Aristarchus, for example. Astronomers have long noted strange lights emanating from this crater. glows, flashes, at times pulsating patterns. These weren't anomalies seen through shaky backyard telescopes, they were recorded by professionals. Even Apollo astronauts reported a bluish glow from the area during orbit. Then there's Mare Crisium, where high-resolution images taken by orbiters showed what appeared to be geometrically aligned structures. Rectangles, towers, shadows cast at unnatural angles. NASA published the photos. They were real. The explanations were not. Light tricks, they said, compression artifacts. But geologists and engineers quietly wondered, what if those weren't tricks? What if we were seeing the decayed remains of something artificial, or worse, something still active? The far side of the moon, the side we never see from Earth, remains a source of endless speculation. Apollo missions never landed there. All human landings occurred on the near side, where Earth could maintain communication. But orbiters circled the entire lunar surface. They saw everything. Rumors leaked of photographs taken by early missions, Lunar Orbiter, Clementine, Apollo 16, that showed towering spires, monoliths, and symmetrical bases. One infamous image, dubbed the Shard, depicts what appears to be a massive vertical structure rising from the moon's surface. It doesn't look natural. It casts a long, thin shadow, and it's gone from NASA's current archives. Another, the so-called Castle photo, allegedly taken by Apollo 10, appears to show a translucent tower suspended above the surface. Critics say it's a lens flare, but if it's not, it would represent a structure thousands of feet high, something that should not exist. In 1994, NASA and the Department of Defense jointly launched the Clementine mission. Its official goal was to map the moon. But Clementine spent most of its time scanning the poles and the far side, using sophisticated imaging equipment designed for battlefield surveillance. After a few months, the mission was abruptly ended. NASA said they had collected enough data. Others believe they found something they weren't ready to share. Apollo missions were broadcast around the world, but not all footage was seen live. Some was recorded and reviewed before being released, and some was never released at all. In 2006, NASA admitted it had lost the original high-quality footage of the Apollo 11 moon landing, over 700 boxes of magnetic tapes. They claimed they had been accidentally erased and reused. This is the most important video in human history, and it was erased? To skeptics, the erasure wasn't accidental, it was deliberate. A way to remove details that couldn't be explained. Shadows that didn't match. Glints in the background. Strange shapes. Shapes in the sky. Then there are the 2-minute gap theories, a period of radio silence during Apollo 11's moonwalk, when Armstrong and Aldrin allegedly switched to a secret medical channel to communicate privately with mission control. What they said remains a mystery. According to alleged leaks, Armstrong radioed, "They're here, they're watching us. I can see them on the ridge." True? Fabricated? No one knows. But NASA has never provided a satisfying explanation for the transmission drop. Over the years, some astronauts began to hint at secrets. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14's lunar module pilot, became an outspoken advocate for UFO disclosure. He claimed that high-ranking military officials had witnessed alien craft, that Roswell was real, and that we are being visited. Mitchell never said he saw aliens on the moon, but he repeatedly urged NASA and the US government to come clean. Buzz Aldrin, too, made headlines when he casually admitted that Apollo 11 saw an unidentified object during their voyage. He later walked the comment back, saying it was likely part of the spacecraft. But the moment had already stirred global curiosity. Even Gordon Cooper, a Mercury astronaut and space pioneer, claimed to have seen UFOs and believed the government was hiding the truth. He submitted sworn testimony to the United Nations urging transparency. These were not crackpots, these were heroes. Engineers, pilots, men trained to be precise and skeptical. Why would they risk their reputations? Unless they knew something we didn't. Even today, lunar anomalies continue to puzzle scientists. For example, the moon rings like a bell. During the Apollo missions, seismic experiments involved deliberately crashing lunar modules into the surface. The resulting vibrations lasted far longer than expected, sometimes for hours. One NASA scientist said the moon rang like a gong or a hollow sphere. This raised the bizarre but serious question: Is the moon hollow? Some theorists propose that the moon might be an artificial satellite, perhaps ancient and long abandoned. Far-fetched? Absolutely. But if the moon is natural, why does it exhibit such unnatural characteristics? It's perfectly positioned to create total solar eclipses. It's unusually large for a planet of Earth's size. Its crust is harder than expected, much harder. And some of its craters appear too shallow, suggesting an inner shell of metal or other dense material. What kind of celestial body resists impact like that? What kind of moon rings when struck? And who built it, if it was built at all? In recent years, other nations have begun sending missions to the moon. China's Chang'e program has successfully landed rovers, collected samples, and even built a communication relay on the moon's far side. But China is secretive. When Chang'e 4 landed on the far side in 2019, NASA requested to collaborate and share data. China agreed, then shared only partial information. Rumors swirled that their lander had captured strange anomalies, unusual light reflections, shadow movements, or even structures. None of this was confirmed. But NASA's sudden renewed interest in returning to the moon through the Artemis program felt oddly urgent. After half a century of relative indifference, why now? What are they hoping to find? Or recover? The moon, once a symbol of conquest and achievement, has become a question mark. Its surface may be gray and lifeless, but its history pulses with mystery. NASA's silence on these anomalies speaks louder than any press release. Perhaps the moon is not just a rock orbiting Earth. Perhaps it is the first step in a longer trail, a breadcrumb left by ancient visitors, or a lookout post for modern ones. If NASA knows more than it says, the secrets may not be buried beneath lunar dust, but in data files, photographs, and memories sealed behind government doors. We looked up at the moon and saw hope. Maybe NASA looked down from the moon and saw something else staring back. Every great secret has a crack. Sometimes it comes from a careless word, sometimes from a lost file, and sometimes from someone who can no longer keep quiet. The story of NASA's alleged cover-ups is filled with shadows, but shadows are only possible when light leaks in. And over the decades, light has leaked in. From hushed voices in government halls to retired engineers with faded ID badges. From grainy photos in attics to files that were never meant to surface. These are the voices NASA never wanted the world to hear, but they spoke anyway. In the 1970s, a woman named Donna Hare worked for a NASA contractor, Philco Ford, with access to sensitive areas inside Johnson Space Center. She was a level-headed professional, part of the team that processed satellite and space imagery. And then she saw something she wasn't supposed to. According to Hare, one day she entered a photo lab and found an image of the moon, sharp, detailed, and stunning. But there was something odd in the sky above the surface, a perfectly structured object. It looked like a craft, metallic, disc-shaped. She asked a technician what it was. He responded, "We're instructed to airbrush those out before they're released to the public." Her blood ran cold. Hare claimed she later spoke with multiple individuals in different departments who confirmed that scrubbing alien structures from NASA imagery was routine practice. Even more disturbing, she said one frightened coworker told her he was taken into a secure room, interrogated, and warned never to speak of what he saw. She went public, gave interviews, testified under oath at the Disclosure Project in 2001. Her story hasn't changed in over 40 years. NASA never responded directly to her claims. They didn't have to. Carl Wolf was a precision electronics technician for the U.S. Air Force in the 1960s. Like Hare, he had top-secret clearance and worked alongside NASA-related teams. One day, while helping repair imaging equipment at Langley Air Force Base, Wolf was invited into a secure area where moon photographs were being processed. And there, in the middle of classified prints, he saw them. Structures, towers, domes, complexes on the moon's far side, clearly artificial. He asked the technician beside him what they were. The man answered, "We've discovered a base on the backside of the moon." Wolf was stunned. He never spoke of it until decades later, at the same Disclosure Project conference. In 2018, just a few months after giving another public interview about what he had seen, Wolf died in a sudden bicycle accident. He was struck by a tractor trailer and declared dead shortly after. Officially, it was a tragic coincidence. But to conspiracy researchers, Wolf's timing, just as he began speaking again, was too perfect, too convenient. Perhaps no name is more polarizing in the alien whistleblower world than Bob Lazar. In 1989, Lazar appeared in a now famous TV interview with reporter George Knapp, his face hidden and voice distorted. He claimed he had worked at a site called S4 near the infamous Area 51 reverse engineering alien spacecraft. Lazar's claims were outrageous, that the US government had multiple alien craft in storage, that he personally worked on one, trying to understand its propulsion system, that the craft used an element not found on Earth, element 115, as its energy source, and that the program was deeply compartmentalized, involving NASA, the military, and private contractors. He later came forward publicly, revealing his identity, and was swiftly attacked. His credentials were questioned. His academic records mysteriously vanished. He became a joke in the mainstream, and yet he never backed down. His story never changed. In recent years, some of his claims have resurfaced with strange accuracy. Element 115, long theorized, was synthesized in 2003. Documents have emerged linking Lazar to Los Alamos National Lab, despite officials denying he ever worked there. He never claimed to have seen aliens, but he claimed we had their machines. Machines we were studying, hiding, and possibly preparing to use. Officially, NASA is a civilian agency independent of the military. Unofficially, many insiders tell a different story. A former NASA subcontractor speaking anonymously claimed there are two versions of nearly every mission, the public one and the classified one. Public missions collect science data. Secret missions gather intelligence, data about unknown objects in space, anomalous signals, or interactions with non-terrestrial technology. The term Unacknowledged Special Access Programs, USAPs, comes up repeatedly in insider accounts. These are programs so classified that even their existence is denied. USAPs are how black budget operations, those outside congressional oversight, are hidden in plain sight. And NASA, according to some, has been deeply embedded in these programs since the Cold War. Ask yourself, how is it that with decades of deep space observation, missions to other planets, and access to the most sophisticated instruments on Earth and in orbit, NASA has found zero evidence of intelligent life? What if they have found it, but the mission report never made it to the public version? In 2001, just one day before 9/11, U.S. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld made a shocking announcement. Over $2.3 trillion in Pentagon transactions could not be accounted for. The next day, that story disappeared from the headlines. But for those watching NASA and related space programs, the incident raised a question. How much money is flowing through hidden channels? How many billions, perhaps trillions, have been funneled into unacknowledged projects? Satellite launches, deep space arrays, Mars rovers, and lunar probes all cost massive sums. But black budget insiders claim some of these missions have shadow counterparts. Additional instruments not listed in the manifest, classified objectives hidden beneath civilian science goals. Some even claim entire off-world programs exist, craft designed to monitor alien activity, bases on the moon or Mars, or even recovered alien ships being tested in remote facilities. Without oversight, we may never know. But whistleblowers hint at a sprawling infrastructure, one funded in secrecy, protected by national security law, and shared only among a handful of elite players. NASA has had its share of leaks, but most are silenced by ridicule. The moment a former engineer or analyst steps forward with a story, the media instinctively labels them fringe. Science dismisses them. Records go missing. Careers are destroyed. It's a pattern. The same pattern. A veteran radio operator claims they intercepted strange Apollo transmissions. Dismissed. An image analyst finds anomalies in Mars rover images. Labeled a conspiracy theorist. A technician sees a file marked EBE, extraterrestrial biological entity, fired the next day. Each story on its own is easy to deny. But together, they form a puzzle with missing pieces that keep pointing to the same possibility. We're not alone, and someone doesn't want us to know. Leaks, whispers, warnings. The truth doesn't always come in a flash of light. Sometimes it drips, slow, persistent, and maddening. NASA's public face remains composed, scientific, and measured. But behind that face lies something more complicated. a web of secrets, of compartmentalized projects, of information so explosive it must be buried under layers of deniability. Perhaps not everyone at NASA knows. Perhaps only a few do. But those few, those in the airbrush rooms, the secure hangars, the black budget halls, they hold pieces of a cosmic truth. And little by little, those pieces are slipping out. The real question is no longer, is NASA hiding something? It's, can the truth stay hidden forever? Perfect. The best secrets aren't buried. They're displayed in the open, dressed in ambiguity, wrapped in doubt, and hidden behind laughter. In a world of information overload, hiding the truth doesn't require silence. It only requires noise. And few institutions understand that better than NASA. For over 6 decades, the space agency has been the gatekeeper of the cosmos, the bridge between humanity and the stars. But what if that bridge is only one way? What if behind its white coats and press releases lies a story that's stranger, deeper, and infinitely more dangerous than anything we've dared to imagine? What if we've already made contact, and they've been hiding it in plain sight? We live in a golden age of imagery. Satellites orbit every corner of the Earth. Rovers beam back ultra-high-definition photos from alien landscapes. Telescopes capture galaxies being born. But some images raise eyebrows. Take, for instance, NASA's own published photos of Mars. In one, a formation looks eerily like a pyramid. Perfect angles, unnatural symmetry. In another, a humanoid shape sits atop a rock. In yet another, a metallic glint catches sunlight where no known material should be. The official response is always the same. Pareidolia, the brain's tendency to see patterns, faces, and objects where there are none. But what if we aren't imagining these patterns? What if we're recognizing something we've seen before, something not of this Earth? Image analysts have long accused NASA of scrubbing, masking, or blurring key areas of photos. Shadows conveniently fall over suspicious shapes. Image resolutions suddenly drop in high-interest zones. Color filters are altered to obscure detail. Why? Why obfuscate images of rocks if they are only rocks? NASA rarely comments on UFOs. When pressed, it falls back on caution. No conclusive evidence. Not our field. We focus on science. But beneath that PR script lies a curious contradiction. NASA has entire departments dedicated to monitoring unknown aerial phenomena, transient events, and anomalous data streams. In 2023, following growing pressure from the Pentagon and public interest, NASA created a new position, Director of UAP Research. It was an acknowledgement, finally, that something unexplained was occurring in our skies and beyond. But even this move was carefully choreographed. NASA announced that it would not study UFOs directly, but rather focus on how to better collect data on future incidents. It sidestepped the mountain of historical evidence, videos, pilot encounters, declassified reports, and instead offered vague intentions for the future. In essence, they admitted something was happening. They just wouldn't say what. NASA was born from the Cold War. Its roots are tangled with the Department of Defense, the CIA, and military contractors. In fact, much of its early research overlapped with reconnaissance, surveillance, and high-altitude spy programs. Even today, many of NASA's most powerful assets, like the Deep Space Network or the Goldstone antennas, are dual-use, scientific tools that also feed intelligence data. It's no stretch to imagine classified information flowing both ways. Some insiders claim NASA's discoveries, anomalous signals, unexplainable sightings, or artifacts of unknown origin, are routed through a security filter before reaching the public. If data is deemed too sensitive, it's diverted to military channels. Consider this. What if the reason NASA hasn't found aliens isn't because there are none, but because the moment they do, it stops being NASA's problem? It becomes national security. Over the decades, Hollywood has shown us aliens in every form imaginable: invaders, saviors, explorers. And often, behind the scripts, you'll find NASA consultants shaping the narrative. From 2001, A Space Odyssey, to Interstellar, NASA has worked directly with filmmakers to guide how space and extraterrestrials are portrayed. This isn't inherently suspicious until you realize how closely those films mirror classified whispers. Zero-gravity propulsion, wormholes, artificial intelligence, megastructures. These ideas, once laughed off, are now part of the cultural vocabulary, thanks to science fiction crafted with NASA's input. Why would the world's top space agency spend time helping movies, unless those stories served a purpose? Could it be soft disclosure? Psychological conditioning? Prepare the public. Normalize the impossible. Blur the line between fiction and reality, so that when the truth does emerge, it feels like just another script. In recent years, world governments have begun to drip-feed the public with revelations once deemed taboo. In 2017, the New York Times broke the story of a secret Pentagon program investigating UFOs. In 2020, the U.S. Navy admitted that several leaked UFO videos were authentic. In 2021, Congress ordered the intelligence community to produce a public UAP report, the first in history. In 2023, whistleblower David Grush testified under oath that the U.S. government possesses non-human craft and even biological material. But NASA's voice in this growing chorus has been muted. It remains the careful older sibling, avoiding firm statements, steering conversations towards science rather than speculation. And yet, some within NASA are beginning to break ranks. A retired engineer, a former mission analyst, an administrator no longer bound by NDAs. One by one, they've begun to confirm the unthinkable, that NASA has known, or at least strongly suspected, the existence of non-human intelligence for decades. They don't come with proof. They don't offer alien corpses, but they tell the same story. NASA knows more than it says, much more. So let's ask the question. Let's strip away the laughter, the labels, the denials. Let's assume for a moment that it is true, that NASA is hiding evidence of alien life. What then? If the secret is real, it is not a secret kept lightly. It is a truth that could unravel our understanding of history, science, religion, and reality itself. It is a truth that could destabilize governments, crash markets, collapse belief systems. And so, perhaps it was hidden not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of panic. Fear of misuse. Fear of the unknown. But truth cannot be caged forever. It seeps through cracks. It finds its way into conversations, art, and testimony. And when it does emerge fully, the world will not be the same. What could NASA be hiding? A signal intercepted from a distant star containing structured data. A derelict craft orbiting the moon, inert for millennia. Fossilized microbial life on Mars, quiet, ancient, undeniable. Technology, alien in origin, reverse engineered in hidden labs. Or even a message, not from another planet but from here, from Earth's deep past, from a civilization lost to time. Each possibility is more staggering than the last. But if even one is true, the human story must be rewritten. Contact changes everything. Our philosophies, our religions, our wars, our economics, our place in the universe. If we are not alone, then we are not the apex of intelligence. If we are being watched, then we are not free. If we are being studied, then we are not in control. But there is another possibility, that the beings, whatever they are not conquerors or gods, but witnesses. Observers of a civilization still finding its footing, waiting for us to be ready. Maybe that's what NASA discovered. Not a threat, but a mirror. A glimpse of who we could become if we survive ourselves. Sooner or later, the dam will break. The age of secrets is ending. Satellites are everywhere. Civilian space programs are rising. AI can scan petabytes of data in seconds. The truth, whatever it is, will come out, not through press conferences, but through pattern recognition. And when it does, history will ask, who knew first? Who told the lie? And who stayed silent? NASA was never supposed to lie. It was born to explore, to reveal, to dream. And maybe, in its own way, it has done that. Maybe hiding the truth wasn't cowardice, but protection, a shield against chaos. Pause before the plunge. But the silence has lasted too long. So, we return to the question. Is NASA hiding evidence of aliens? Maybe, maybe not. But somewhere deep in a forgotten server or a classified vault, a photograph exists, a signal is archived, a logbook remains, and when we find it, the silence will finally break. Not with a bang, not with a scream, but with a whisper that echoes across the stars. We were never alone.